Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Breaking right now, a war of words between President Trump and the man who oversaw the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. In an interview on Fox News this morning, Trump criticized the military for not having killed bin Laden sooner, and he dismissed the retired admiral who oversaw that operation as a Hillary Clinton backer.
McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer and an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that?
Admiral William McRaven speaking to our Jake Tapper, saying this: I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. I stand by my comment that the president's attack on the media is the greatest threat to our democracy in my lifetime. When you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands. That from Admiral McRaven in that response, particularly from President Trump in that interview, wide-ranging interview on Fox. All right, let's discuss this now with CNN military analyst Lieutenant General Mark Herdling. And you served with McRaven in Europe and Iraq. You even tweeted out saying, having served with Bill McRaven in Europe and Iraq, he is one of the best leaders and selfless servants of our nation I have ever met, not a political bone in his body. So now what do you make of this back and forth?
I'm going to reinforce what I said, Frederica, about Bill McRaven. He is an unbelievable patriot and a true servant, not of any president, but of the Constitution of the United States. That's what military people raise their hand to vow to support and defend. And Admiral McRaven has been very vocal about that when he's seen elements of the Constitution being driven down, dismissed by the current president. Bill and I served about the same amount of time together, so I would guess he came in probably either under President Ford or President Nixon, and then served multiple presidents in his time in service. He was a fan, as I am, of both President Bush and President Obama, because we served under him under both of them in combat, and saw that, like any president, they have all sorts of really difficult requirements, difficult decisions. We don't always agree with everything they do or say, but truthfully, if they uphold the office of the president and uphold the Constitution, that's what is most important.
And as a veteran, what comes across your mind when you hear a sitting president dismiss an admiral, a retired admiral, who oversaw these incredible operations, such risk-taking operations, and criticize him for over politics?
Yeah, I'd use one word, Frederica, and that's disgusting. Everyone knows Bill McRaven as being the guy that led the bin Laden raid. But truthfully, I knew him as the guy who was the JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Commander in Iraq. And there were multiple missions where this guy was involved. placed himself in danger, led soldiers and the joint force in some of the most challenging situations you can imagine. And for having someone like the President of the United States, a man that holds an office that's supposed to represent all people and who says he supports the military, to just dismiss this great American hero as a guy who was a Hillary Clinton lover, which is patently not true, is just really disgusting. It's unfortunate, but it's just another day in the life of the Trump administration, I guess.
And this comes a week after there were observations and a lot of criticism about the president's handling of Veterans Day weekend. Not at first going to an American cemetery, an hour or so outside of Paris, and then when getting back to the United States, not going to Arlington National Cemetery, which is tradition for sitting presidents. And the president was asked about that in this same wide-ranging Fox interview, and this is what he had to say.
I should have done that. I was extremely busy on calls for the country. We did a lot of calling, as you know.
But this is Veterans Day.
I probably, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year. But we had come in very late at night, and I had just left literally the American Cemetery in Paris, and I really probably assumed that was fine. And I was extremely busy because of affairs of state, doing other things.
Your thoughts?
It's a factor of leadership, Frederica. Leaders know what to do, where to be, what things to say. And in all three of those things, I think the president is currently a failure. It's more than just saying, I support our troops. You have to understand what a leader of the military has to do, what they have to show. And sometimes that's being in places where you don't want to be, at times when you don't want to be there and you have a lot of other things on your mind or on your plate. But truthfully, there are just flat out times when you need to be different places to show your respect. And in this case, last weekend was one of those kind of occasions where the president received a failing grade in many military people's view. It's just unfortunate.
It is Tuesday, the 20th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, folks. Just a little smidgen, less than a dash of hot smoked Hungarian paprika. Okay, you can use the Spanish kind as well. It's lovely. But it will make all the difference, indeed. Well. But her emails. Yes. Okay, well, as I've said before, and as everyone knows, anything, absolutely anything they accuse, like us of doing, they have been doing for a long time, and they don't really care. It's just a wedge issue. I mean, look, Newt Gingrich, Henry Hyde, all these people that were hammering Clinton, Bill, about illicit sexual behaviors. Well, they were embarking and endeavoring in much more illicit sexual behaviors than Bill ever did. At least Bill had, okay, we won't get into it. Nonetheless, it was just hypocrisy upon hypocrisy, because that is their middle name. So Ivanka using personal emails, illegally, by the way. Let's remind ourselves once again, the law that they're trying to hammer Hillary on was not in effect when she was Secretary of State. All right? Let's be clear about that. It was only after. So for that to be the campaign issue, and I have to say, that was what Trump would talk about in the lead up to the chance of lock her up. What were they going to lock her up over? Well, anything, but it just happened to be the emails. Emails this. How did the Russians get involved? Russia, if you're listening, give me, find those 30-odd-some thousand emails. 100,000 million, 300 million emails. It always increases, the number does in Trump's head. But regardless, it was all about the emails. Well, okay. So what are we to make of it? Well, we will still have investigations of Hillary Clinton in front of Lindsey Graham. And already, I mean, Eric Boehlert called this morning. I mean, he was damn close. He made a joke before the New York Times came out, said, we had how many years of Hillary Clinton's emails on the front page of the New York Times? And Ivanka's will be on A12. Well, it was on A13. Pretty damn close. I'd like the over-under on that one. Jeez. Well, what else is in the news? The GOP county chair in California said that the wildfires that destroyed Paradise. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. He's a Columbiana County Republican Party in Ohio. Because they just don't like those California values. You know, like clean water, clean air, appropriate gas mileage in your internal combustion engine. You know, terrible things like that. Said that the wildfires that destroyed Paradise, not Pleasure, California, Paradise, California, was God's punishment for liberals. Really? Then what is Ohio? Trump is afraid to visit the troops, it's reported, because he's afraid of being killed. Yeah. You always worry about the regular military coming after your ass. I mean, that's what historically has been put down, especially in My Struggle. That was his bedtime reading for I don't know how long. Ivana talked about My Struggle being next to his bed. And that was way back in, the 80s? So, My Struggle. Yeah, that's the English translation of Mein Kampf. Yes. From the little fella with the mustache, the funny mustache. The paper hanger. Yeah, that guy. Well, you have to fear that regular army. But he wants to have military parades. He won't go visit the troops in a conflict zone because he's afraid of getting killed. But he wants a military parade. And I'm thinking, hasn't anyone told him what happened to Sadat at a military parade? Apparently not. Maybe on purpose. You never know. These people are snakes. They're backstabbers. Jeez. So there's that. We'll have a little bit of news on MSB, a little bit. But it looks like Pompeo hand-delivered a strategy to MSB. Oh, yeah, MBS, Bin Salem. That will give him an out. A case of deniability in the killing of Khashoggi. Sounds treasonous to me. But they're just going to say, hey, it's just regular diplomacy. I mean, come on. Okay. Other news about that fella is that the rest of the royal family aren't very happy, especially since somebody in the royal family will be pinned with that murder and will be dealt with accordingly. And in that royal family, they usually take people's heads off. Literally, not metaphorically. Literally. And MBS thinks he's got his hand pick of somebody. They haven't chosen anybody yet. But the rest of the royal family are saying, maybe this guy's getting a little bit too big for his britches. Maybe. Tough family. Boy. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Bistro Cafe? Well, at the top, that was retired General Mark Hertling. Pretty much slamming Trump for disrespecting and insulting Admiral McRaven. So much for embracing the troops. Trump only obviously likes his generals and his admirals when they kiss his butt. I don't mean his ring. I mean his butt. This guy has no idea how our system works because he never cared to begin with, and what he did learn was translated from the Cyrillic. Moving on the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tennessee police descended on a black man with their guns drawn after a neighbor heard him recite a Jay-Z lyric. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Those must have been thin walls. A local NRA leader demands secession from Washington after a state gun control initiative won big. These people, they don't even have a ball to take home, and pretty soon they won't even have a home. And Rick Perry and his wife face serious legal questions for using Texas campaign cash for travel expenses. Oh, no one told them it was illegal? Or did they just not even care? On the rest of the menu, we then move to the chef's table, where Trump officials considered ways to share confidential census responses with law enforcement, which just happens to be illegal because they can't think of anything legal. They're mobsters. And senior Senate Intelligence Committee member Ron Wyden called on U.S. intelligence officials to issue a public report on the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link at the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Engage us there, do please, and also check out Kelly's shows on Saturday at the table, 3 p.m. in the afternoon on the West Coast. That would be 6 p.m. in the evening on the East. Later on, she teams up with Ricky May for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, beginning at 9 p.m. West Coast, midnight East Coast. Then, if you would take a gander to the leftish of the page, our homepage at netrootsradio.com, from the chat room link there, you will then notice the contribute button. Do become a Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your recurring donation is what keeps our lights burning here at Netroots Radio. So we're able to pay the bills because of your generosity. In fact, we would be unable to do that without your help. And bills are going up. I know it's the holidays. I'm sorry for making these entreaties, but they're much more plaintive than before because they're real. Sorry about that. Okay, so do please follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform, and we are forever grateful that he does that. You could check us out on Facebook in spite of Zuckerberg. Gosh, that Zuckerberg guy. Kelly takes care of the live Facebook platform there, and we are grateful for her doing that. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, an integral part to the multimedia operation here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. By the way, do follow the show on Facebook, in spite of Zuckerberg, damn him. And we are on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. I got to look into the Libsyn thing since Pandora is buying Libsyn. I think that's how it's working. They're becoming part of each other. So we'll check out Libsyn once again. Okay, this first article here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Tana Geneva out of Raw Story. Jay-Z's hit song 99 Problems is in large part about the discrimination black men face in encounters with the police. Isn't it weird? Now, does art presage life, or does life presage art? And when does art become more than just a mirror of life? Yes, these are what we used to sit around and speak about while we were deconstructing, the administrative artistic state. Well, a black man in Tennessee had the police called on him because he recited a lyric from a song, and a neighbor thought he was abusing his fiancée. Well, it's an honest mistake, I suppose, if you don't know anything about, music. Jay-Z, 99 Problems. Well, I can understand, and maybe people are, concerned. I've stood up when a partner was beating the crap out of their partner on buses and whatnot. Probably you have to be careful because you could get killed doing that. Police often that's the number one killer of police, breaking up domestic disturbance between a couple. Well, Devon Eddington was apparently having a good-natured argument with his brother over the phone about sports. Apparently, he excitedly exclaimed, "I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one." And that's the chorus of 99 Problems. Okay, well, soon after, the police showed up to his door to assess the situation with their guns out, because that's department policy everywhere. Shoot first, ask questions later. What's the worst that can happen? You have a paid vacation for a couple of weeks to a month. Well, when they realized his fiancée was safe and taking a bath on the second floor, they retreated without further incident. Eddington did say that the police apologized. The policeman was like, "We apologize. It seems like you've been swatted." Swatting is false reporting an emergency to public safety by a person for the intent of getting a SWAT team response to a location where no emergency exists, and then usually the subject of the SWAT ends up dead. If you're lucky, maybe only maimed. Now, not always. I mean, sometimes, they go to Leonardo DiCaprio's place, which they did, and found out nothing was going on, and, but they did search his house. Well, it's a major threat to public safety because, as the article says here, it can lead to violent encounters with police. Not only can, it has. Josh Israel of Think Progress brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook at Speakeasy. The NRA sued earlier this year to stop Washington state voters from considering a package of gun control measures known as Initiative 1639. But the state Supreme Court rejected their legal arguments. On Election Day, nearly 60, that's a 6 and a 0, % of the state's voters rejected the gun group's political arguments that the initiative would criminalize self-defense. Now, one of the organization's local activist leaders in Washington state wants to take his bullets and go home by having the more conservative eastern part of the state secede and form a pro-gun state of its own. Maybe they could call it Idahoington. The new restrictions included in the ballot initiative include a ban on semi-automatic rifles for those under the age of 21. Oh, what a travesty. Stricter background checks. Oh, no. Oh, you're trying to dig into my past. And a waiting period for those who do purchase them. But I want to kill my wife now. And safe storage requirements for all firearms. I got too many kids. It's live and let live. The strongest shall survive. According to the group's Political Victory Fund, Jim Leidingson is the official frontline activist leader for the city of Celle. After the gun restrictions overwhelmingly passed, Leidingson reportedly emailed the opinion editor of the Columbian, a Washington local newspaper, to demand secession for his part of the state. Now, the NRA did not immediately respond to a Think Progress inquiry about whether it agrees with its frontline activist leader Leidingson and its endorsed state representative on the secession issue. On Thursday, though, the NRA filed a federal lawsuit claiming that the new gun restrictions are unconstitutional. Also of Think Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like Rick and Anita Perry are getting in deep trouble. Yeah, I gotta tell you, rust never sleeps. These people have been corrosive for a very long time. And they worked hard to get where they are, and they should be able to cash in, at least in their minds. It's been 4 years since Energy Secretary Rick Perry served as governor for the state of Texas, but the Trump administration official is reportedly still using his campaign money to fund present-day travel for his wife as she accompanies her husband on work trips. Well, you can't have Donnie pay for it. According to a report from the San Antonio Express News published last week, Perry and his wife, Anita, have been globetrotting using leftover funding from his Texas campaign days, with Perry using federal funds while his wife relies on the campaign money. Well, they saw what happened to the other people. I mean, come on. Well, this year, Anita Perry has traveled round trip to London for Saudi nuclear meetings to the tune of $17,000. All money that came from her husband's gubernatorial campaign account. That continues a trend. Anita Perry traveled abroad last year for the Department of Energy, visiting Paris and delivering a speech about women in energy before International Energy Agency member countries and CEOs. She also visited South Africa, where the Energy Department said she engaged in both public and private energy stakeholders on behalf of the United States. Oh, wow. They're like, she's just a diplomat with no diplomatic credentials. At the time, it was unclear where funding for her travel might be coming from, although the Energy Department insisted taxpayer money had not paid for Anita Perry's expenses. But finance records indicate that excess campaign funding is covering the costs. So it wasn't taxpayers just grifting off their donors. Texans for Rick Perry reportedly had nearly $80,000 as of its filing in July, money that is seemingly being used to fund travel for the Perrys. Well, under state law, that is illegal. Well, Perry isn't alone, however, in courting controversy related to travel expenses. Tom Price, Scott Pruitt, Ryan Zinke. Oh, my God. They're in like a murderer's row. House Democrats have previously pushed for more information about the Perry's travel, with Democrats set to assume control of the House beginning in January. Such questions could translate into more aggressive inquiries. Let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Lucy Wong. When a friend comes to you after a stressful day, how do you comfort them? Do you let them rant? Do you pour them a glass of wine? Those could work, but a new study finds that a very effective technique is also simple and easy.
Hugging.
Michael Murphy is a psychology postdoc at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. He wanted to know if people who received hugs regularly could handle stress and conflict better.
Individuals who report perceiving the availability of a network of supportive individuals tend to show better adaptation when faced with stress.
But just because you have a support network doesn't mean that you definitely feel that support.
So some researchers have argued that many of the behaviors we use to support others who are stressed might actually be counterproductive because these behaviors might unintentionally communicate to others that they're not competent to manage stress.
Murphy and his team interviewed 404 men and women every evening for 2 weeks.
During these interviews, the participants were asked a simple yes or no question whether somebody had hugged them that day, and a simple yes or no question of whether they had experienced conflict or tension with somebody that day. They also were asked questions about their social interactions, how many social interactions they had that day, and responded to questions about negative and positive mood states.
And the researchers found that individuals who experienced a conflict were not as negatively affected if they received a hug that day, as were participants who experienced conflict and didn't get a hug. Murphy and his team also saw that people who received a hug didn't carry the negative effect to the next day, while those who did not receive a hug would. The findings are in the journal PLOS One. Murphy does include this caveat.
So our findings should not be taken as evidence that people should just start hugging anyone and everyone who seems distressed. The hug from one's boss at work or a stranger on the street, that could be viewed as neither consensual nor positive.
The idea is to relieve stress, not add to it. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Lucy Wong.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Thanksgiving. Let's eat. America's most food-focused holiday traces its roots back to the abundant feast that Pilgrims and Indians enjoyed together in the fall of 1621. Only half of the Mayflower Pilgrims who had arrived at Plymouth Rock the previous December survived their first year in the New World. New, of course, only to those undocumented immigrants from England, not to the local citizens. Still, to celebrate and offer thanks for their survival, the newcomers planned a communal meal following the fall harvest. And, in appreciation for being taught by the Wampanoag people how to raise corn and gather the region's seafood, they invited Massasoit, the tribal leader, to join them. He did, surprising the host by arriving with 90 members of his community. But the Wampanoag party didn't come empty-handed, bringing much of the fare for what became a 3-day banquet featuring venison, duck, geese, wild furkeys, Wampanoag for gobblers, eels, mussels, lobster, gooseberries, plums, cornmeal pudding, popcorn balls, who knew, barley beer, and fortified wine. And you thought you overate at Thanksgiving. But this was not the first precursor of our annual November Foodapalooza. Texans assert that it began near El Paso in 1598, when the Manso and Piro tribes roasted ducks, geese, and fish over an open fire to give sustenance to a lost and bedraggled group of Spanish colonizers. Meanwhile, Floridians insist that the firstest of all Thanksgivings was in 1565, when the Temucan people shared a stew of salt pork and garbanzo beans with Spanish settlers at St. Augustine. This is Jim Hightower saying these interesting tidbits raise an equally interesting question for us to ponder this Thanksgiving. What would have happened to those pilgrims and Spanish settlers if the Native Americans had Donnie Trump around to build a big, beautiful wall?
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A federal judge temporarily barred the Trump administration late Monday from enforcing a policy to refuse asylum to immigrants who illegally cross the U.S.-Mexico border.
The new temporary restraining order says the president may not rewrite immigration law to impose conditions forbidden by Congress.
In his order, Judge John Teager writes, asylum seekers will be put at increased risk of violence and other harms at the border, and many will be deprived of meritorious asylum claims. The government offers nothing in support of the new rule that outweighs the need to avoid these harms. Immigration advocates argue it is illegal to block asylum claims based on how an immigrant entered the country. The judge's order remains in force until the next hearing, now set for December 19.
It's not really news, but Ivanka Trump is a hypocrite.
Breaking news out of the White House tonight. A new report from the Washington Post reveals that Ivanka Trump sent, quote, hundreds of emails last year to White House aides, cabinet officials, and her assistants using a personal email account, many of them in violation of federal records rules. In a statement issued via a spokesperson, Ivanka Trump's lawyer attempted to explain away her use of personal email by saying she had only used the personal email account prior to being briefed on the rules governing email usage. Well, if only someone had told Ivanka Trump what the White House policy is on using your personal email before she started working there.
It's unbelievable how Hillary Clinton got away with the email lie, the email scam, the email corruption.
We know Hillary can't be trusted. We've learned that. With America's security, you take a look at her email situation. Can we trust her with our security?
How can Hillary manage this country when she can't even manage her emails?
She doesn't even remember whether or not she was instructed on how to use emails.
Some of the 5,800 U.S. troops sent to the southern border to deal with the migrant caravan will be sent home as early as next week, according to the general overseeing their deployment. But using the U.S. military as a campaign prop isn't the only way Trump is abusing them. He attracted the anger of top former military officials and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle following his attacks against retired Admiral William McRaven, the man who oversaw the mission that killed Osama bin Laden.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer and an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that? Wouldn't it have been nice? You know, think of this. living in Pakistan, beautifully in Pakistan, in what I guess they considered a nice mansion. I don't know, I've seen nicer. But living in Pakistan, right next to the military academy, everybody in Pakistan knew he was there. And we give Pakistan $1.3 billion a year. And they don't tell him. They don't tell him.
You're not even going to give them credit for taking down bin Laden?
They took him down, but look. There's news right there. He lived in Pakistan. We're supporting Pakistan. We're giving them $1.3 billion a year, which we don't give them anymore, by the way. I ended it. Because they don't do anything for us. They don't do a damn thing for us.
Trump still hasn't visited the troops in combat, despite having been in office for almost 2 years. On Monday, he visited California to survey the damage from the fires that are ravaging the state.
California, the purpose of your trip tomorrow?
Just to see the firefighters. Nobody's ever seen what's going on over there.
Of course, Trump couldn't remember the name of the town that was virtually wiped out in the campfire, referring to it as Pleasure.
And what we saw at Pleasure, what a name right now. But what we just saw, we just left Pleasure. Paradise. Or Paradise. And what we just saw at Paradise is just, it's just not acceptable.
In an interview with Fox's Chris Wallace on Sunday, Trump doubled down on his claim that forest mismanagement was to blame for California's wildfires. Well, the Thanksgiving week began with multiple shootings. Welcome to America. In Chicago, 3 people are dead after a man opened fire at Mercy Hospital. One victim was an emergency room physician who'd been romantically involved with the shooter, who also died. In Denver, 4 people were injured and 1 was killed in a shooting near Coors Field. Police are still hunting for a suspect. And police were also called to a home in southwest Philadelphia Monday, where they found the bodies of 4 people in the basement. The victims, 2 men and 2 women, who appear to have been in their 30s, each were shot in the head. The shoe company Tom's is donating $5 million and mobilizing its social network and consumer base to support the campaign to end gun violence together.
Tonight we're announcing that we're going to evolve our giving model. So Tom's not only will continue to give shoes, but we will give considerable resources to the causes and the most important issues of our time. And we're going to start by giving $5 million to the most amazing organizations who are working hard on the ground every day to end gun violence. And this will be the single largest corporate gift to end gun violence in the history of the United States.
Find out more at toms.com. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is fully listener-supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. The year's biggest political gathering in Asia has ended with world leaders failing to agree to a joint statement. Trade differences between the U.S. and China overshadowed the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation talks in Papua New Guinea after Beijing refused to endorse U.S. language that condemned Chinese trade practices. Jeremy Cohen-Seton is a research fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
When you try to insert words about state-owned enterprises using unfair trade practices, everybody understands that this is language that is aimed at China directly. For that reason, this is much harder for Chinese leaders to just agree on that new terminology.
Ahead of direct talks later this month, China and the U.S. both used the APEC summit to highlight their differences. Chinese President Xi Jinping warned that global growth is being shadowed by protectionism and unilateralism of the U.S. sort. Vice President Mike Pence, meanwhile, threatened more U.S. tariffs until China changes the way it does business. But not everyone in attendance took those words seriously.
We do not offer a constricting belt or a one-way road. When you partner with us, we partner with you, and we all prosper.
China's reputation also emerged from the APEC summit a bit dinged. 3 Chinese diplomats were stopped by police after trying to enter the office of Papua New Guinea's foreign minister in an apparent effort to alter the summit's joint statement. Hesitant to get too close to either the U.S. or China, Cohen-Seton says many Asian countries are finding refuge in each other's company.
Other countries are doubling down on trade liberalization between themselves. We're seeing new countries like South Korea and Indonesia being interested in joining TPP. The interest in those trade agreements has increased since the U.S. has started to look more inward.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit, folks. It's chilly. And we will be getting a tad warmer today. We should be in the mid-60s, and our overnight lows should be coming up as well. Today will be 63 to 65, and tonight we'll have an overnight low in the mid-40s. Well, what's going to be happening in the meantime? Well, the winds are still light and variable, this time out of the east-southeast, and they will continue so until tonight, where they will continue out of the east-southeast but pick up in velocity at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then they will shift tomorrow out of the south-southeast, maintaining that clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour. But we will then be getting about an inch of rain tomorrow, Wednesday. And then on Thanksgiving, we are expected to get a half an inch of rain. And the day after that, which would be a Friday, another quarter to half inch of rain. Slacking off on Saturday, where we're expected only a quarter. Well, that looks like something to look forward to. In the meantime, today it will be sunny. And though we are still under a stagnant air advisory, even though the general forecast has shown that the winds are light and variable, they picked up a little bit more. They've been going about 3 to 5 miles per hour on occasion. So it is agitating the air, at least where the mothership is here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Networks Radio's mothership. Ha! Well, pollen is still not a issue, but that air quality and air stagnation advisory shows that the air quality index is at 56 parts per million, so not too good. People with respiratory problems should stay inside with filtered air. The UV index has now gone even lower than what it has been. The daytime UV is in the green low at 1. First day we've seen that. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.01 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, though, and that relative humidity at the moment is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 38 degrees with a rain shower. Paris is 37 and cloudy, and they have a snow flurry advisory, so they are expected to drop in temperature. Rome is 59 degrees with a rain shower, and they have a flooding advisory. So take care if you're in Rome. Kiev is 30 degrees and partly cloudy. Kabul is 49 degrees and fair. Well, we'll see about that. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 48 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees with a rain shower. San Francisco, California is 48 degrees with smoke. And they have an air stagnation and toxic air advisory report because they don't have fog. They don't have smog. They don't have any of the other usual culprits of bad air, but they do have smoke. Ew. And New York is 43 degrees and cloudy, and you do have a wind advisory for small craft on your waterways, so do take care. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. David Dash of the New Civil Rights Movement brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Members of the Trump administration were considering ways to share confidential responses with law enforcement officials, effectively weaponizing the constitutionally required census against respondents. Who thinks like this? We know. A Washington Post exclusive report on Monday evening reveals Justice Department officials appear to be considering ways to circumvent the confidentiality of census responses. Well. DOJ attorney Ben Aguinaga, in a June 12th email to Acting Assistant Attorney General John Gore, suggested not saying too much in response to a question about the confidentiality of the survey, the Post adds. The Census Bureau, which is run by the Commerce Department, we're looking at you, Wilbur, is not allowed to share any confidential information with any other government agency. Well, that's just a quaint notion now, isn't it? Because after all, we do have precedent from a previous president who wasn't black, that the Constitution is nothing but a goddamn piece of paper. And I quote that directly. The Trump administration has been under scrutiny after trying to add a citizenship question to the census. Not completing the census is a violation of federal law. So it is somewhat of a catch-22 now, isn't it?
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Mark Hosenball of Reuters brings us this final offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Dateline, Washington. U.S. intelligence officials should issue a public report on the killing of Saudi Arabian journalist, I should say, actually, Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. A senior Democratic U.S. senator said yesterday, following published reports, the CIA believes Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had personally ordered the murder. The reported finding was the most definitive link made yet to the de facto Saudi ruler's direct involvement and contradicts Saudi government assertions that he was not. Senate Intelligence Committee member Ron Wyden, my senator, by the way, here in Oregon, in a statement to Reuters, called on U.S. spy chiefs to, quote, come out and provide the American people and the Congress with a public assessment of who ordered the killing, end quote. Khashoggi, a U.S.-based Washington Post columnist who was a critic of the Saudi government, was murdered on October 2nd at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, where he went to collect documents needed for a planned marriage. After offering contradictory explanations for Khashoggi's disappearance, Riyadh said last week that Khashoggi was killed and his body dismembered when negotiations to convince him to Saudi Arabia failed. The public prosecutor said it would seek the death penalty for the 5 suspects. I think their negotiations broke down because as soon as he entered a inner chamber of the consulate, they started strangling him. Okay, just saying. The case has complicated Donald Trump's efforts to preserve ties with an important U.S. ally in the region and his support for the Crown Prince. Trump said on Sunday he does not want to listen to an audio recording of Khashoggi's murder, despite pressure to punish Saudi Arabia for the killing. He listened to it, and he liked it. Trump said in a Fox News Sunday interview that he would not listen to the recording because it is a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I don't want to hear the tape. Can I hear it again? He didn't say the last part. But whenever he says he hasn't done something, he's done it. The CIA, relying mainly on circumstantial evidence and its experts' conclusions that the Crown Prince tightly controlled Saudi government actions, last week briefed Congress on its assessment that the prince ordered Khashoggi's assassination. Sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. The briefing to Congress was the foundation for a flood of media leaks reporting that the agency had concluded that the Crown Prince ordered the murder, but Congress was not presented with a written agency reporting that source said. Now, the CIA assessment is backed by the firing last week by the Saudi government of two top Saudi security officials, both of whom U.S. officials believe were implicated in the murder. Turkish authorities have leaked details of what they said were audio recordings of Khashoggi's murder inside the consulate. Some U.S. officials, including CIA Director Gina Haspel, have been given access to the recordings, and she liked it too, because she was the torture queen over there, in Abu Ghraib. Meanwhile, despite the global outcry over the murder, the Crown Prince plans to participate in a G20 summit in Argentina at the end of this month. And Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu at the UN did not request a UN inquiry into Khashoggi's death when he met with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, though they did discuss the case. More to come. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. Netroots Radio does broadcast on for the rest of the day and into the evening. We'll meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We're not going to take a day off. I don't think so, because, hey, we're here for you. We're a virtual salon. And we will visit with you tomorrow indeed. So do stay tuned. Do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will visit with you right here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.